What up, what up? This is Ray Grand, your host, and you're listening to The Ray Grand Show, where we talk about redefining a disability and overcoming. I've been paralyzed from 22 years from bacterial spinal meningitis. I know a few things. That's right. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Good day, people. This is Ray Grand. This is the Ray Grand Show, and today we have a special guest with me. His name is Kris Cordero, and this story is so amazing. Let me tell you, watching his story really touched my heart. It's about forgiveness. It's about a new disability, and we know how I feel about the word disability, so we're gonna redefine it. The condition. Kris was a wrestler, and he had a wrestling accident, and we also have a few things in common. I went to Oklahoma State University. I'm a Cowboy, and Kris is a Sooner. But guess what? We're still brothers, and we're still living life, and we're still positive and doing the things that we do. And I want to introduce you, Kris, and we're gonna get to it. We're gonna jump into it. How you doing today, Kris?
Awesome. Thank you, Ray, for having me on your show, and I'm really excited for the new things that you're developing and everything like that, and raising awareness of disabilities. And yep. Before we get started, I'm definitely going to say a Sooners fan, so Boomer Sooner. But yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on the show, and really looking forward to creating things to engage people and hopefully break that barrier of, that people are kind of like fearful when they're a disability. They're like, I don't want to reach out. They're not sure how to, and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully my content will encourage them. Just be you and do yourself, so.
Absolutely. So, Kris, walk me through that process. 16 years old, wrestler, walking, healthy, strong, and then boom.
Yeah, then happens. Yeah. So I was, I was very gifted in sports from a young age. In ninth grade, I was 6'3", 275. And I was put on some major weight. I was like a giant man child. So I think, I could put up 365 on bench a few times, and I could, on box squat, I could put up, 600 plus, no big deal, and so I was pretty talented at what I did, and I knew that's what I was going to do. So, I dedicated a lot of time doing it, in, football, wrestling, and then I have two older brothers, and so they were doing the same thing. So we were always just, so my brothers were kind of my coach kind of deal, my oldest brother. And so in the video, when you actually hear that guy, talking, that's my brother, and so we were just like, mysteriously, back then we had like a camera, and so we had a camera for some reason. We were to borrow it, start recording some events, because cameras back in the day were like, high dollar and expensive, right?
Remember that. Yeah.
And so it's basically just a 3-day tournament. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. I'm used to just going to it, just doing what I do. I know how the process goes. You basically, for the first 2 days, that specific tournament or any other tournament, you just wrestle. They have just like a giant, bracket, and you have every heavyweight in the division. So like you go in, you weigh in with everybody and all that kind of stuff. They set the bracket, and based on how you win and that kind of deal, you work towards finals and stuff. And so 2 days of wrestling, pretty tough bracket. It was used for like state placement. It was that kind of like a qualifier thing.
Yeah.
And so never wrestled this guy. He was a senior. I was a sophomore in high school. I weighed in that day at 256 because try to cut some weight and move it faster than the big boys, get a win, go for the win. And so, it was wrestled all 2 days. And then that day, the specific day when I broke my neck, I met him, there's nothing out of the ordinary. Hey, nice to meet you. Weigh in. All right, cool, whatever. That's the first I'm going to wrestle. When you wrestle, like, it was just another big guy to the next, it's like, it's what you do, and so basically, wrestled a few that morning, and then they broke, and we went and had like dinner, kind of rest. We had like 3-hour break, and they set up the wrestling mats for the finals, and they bring the crowds in, all that stuff. And I wrestled this guy, and the one thing that I remember specifically is, he was 275. So I remember when I tied up with him, I mean, he was dense. He was strong. And I was like, you know, you calculate, and you know, like this win is not going to happen by a pin. You know, if you're familiar with wrestling, you pin them on their back, and you can win, right?
Yeah.
So the other way of winning is you can win by points. And so we literally are just like throwing each other around there. We ain't going nowhere with it. So we end up stalemate, and so in wrestling, how they break a stalemate is you wear color bands on your ankles, and like one's red, one's green, and then the ref has a coin, and ref flips a coin. It was my choosing. I can choose if I want a bottom position, he could be top, or I could be top, he could be bottom.
Okay.
This guy was huge. I knew that I knew that I couldn't keep him from getting up, and I didn't want to lose. But I knew that I lost. I cut some weight, and I was significantly faster, and I could get away from him. Right. So that was my plan. Just come up, explode, get away from him, and then there's 1 point, and then just ride it out and win the match by 1 point. Because I mean, we were so stalemate. I was just like, man, I'm not going to win this one. That's another important part is like, losing is a part of life, and people think, well, losing means it's over and it's final and it's fatal. Failure is never fatal. It's just a learning experience to move on to the next experience. Go ahead.
Do you remember when the incident happened? Because when I watched the video, it was like 5 seconds. He had you up, and then I'll put the video in the link for the viewers. And he had you up. He didn't, and then he's literally, I see your head about to hit the floor, and then I'm like, wow. And then the video changes. Like, do you remember that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I was completely conscious the entire time. I did not lose consciousness, and so I'll kind of set it up a little bit. So I chose down. He's kind of on me, and you can see in the video. I explode up. I come up. Because your goal is to explode up when they're not expecting it and get away from them and move forward. You're supposed to step forward and out of it to get away from them. He was just he's a massive man. And you can see even in the interview that we did on the news yesterday, he's a big man. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm going to get away from him. But it literally happened less than 20 seconds. And so I try to step forward, but he took his right hand and grabbed my ankle. And at the same time, he shoved his shoulder in my back, which kind of propelled me forward. Right. So I'm already in that path. And so I'm like, okay, either A, I get to the edge of the mat, we get a reset back to the center, or B, it's just kind of scramble, try to, not get hurt. In my case, I got hurt. So as he does that, his momentum, you kind of see me like get arched back and then kind of flip forward. Yeah. And as we're going forward, when my headgear hit the mat, there's like rubber on my headgear. And the mats were very sticky, the old school mats. And my head got stuck. I couldn't get my head out. And literally, as I hit, I remember folding up. And, like, if you imagine, like, holding your neck and looking straight down, but it just kept going. Like, I remember my eyes, like, making contact with my chest. That's how far I bent in. And so, like, I literally, I felt it explode, and it was instantly. It was probably the most violent thing I've ever experienced in my life. And so
Did it hurt, or was it just like
incredibly painful? Incredibly painful. And like,
how would you describe that pain? Like,
it kind of reminded me, like, if you ever burned yourself, right? You ever burned yourself on accident, you're like, oh, this just aches and aches and aches. Mm-hmm. But imagine that magnified and all over your body. Mm. So not only you have the physical pain of the broken vertebrae, but, it was literally like you lose your strength, because when you're a quad, you don't have your triceps and you don't have your fingers. And I couldn't figure out why I couldn't move my arms. And I was trying to push myself up to get, you get a stinger and you get back up, back to your feet, and I couldn't move and I couldn't breathe because it, right then it paralyzed my diaphragm. Yeah. So I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on, and face down. Broke. It's definitely. I knew it was broke. And they're like, trying to. Yeah, it's just a stinger. And I'm like, no, this is something happened. And so, like, what ended up happening, like, I had blood on the mat. You can't see that because I broke my nose previously. And so I'm, like, thinking the worst case scenario because I can see blood, but I can't pick myself up. And they wouldn't let me move, you know. Like, don't move, you know, trying to keep me relaxed and that kind of deal. And, you know, they cut my headgear off because I just couldn't breathe, you know. I just felt like I was suffocating because, you know, your diaphragm's paralyzed. You can't push yourself up. You're like, why are my fingers not – I mean, my fingers were starting to, like – they were kind of working but not really. And I was just – yeah. So it was definitely violent. I remember all of it. And then, you know, after they knew I had a spinal cord injury. And even Coach, like, I interviewed him. He's like, yeah. He said, I got down there. And I have this audio out there. That'd be really funny to play because he's really country. He's really country. Yeah. And, yeah, he was like, I tried to pinch your leg and you weren't moving, you know. And I'm like, you know, he's like, I didn't feel it, you know. He's asking me if I could feel it. I'm like, I can't feel anything, you know. So
did you speak to the wrestler that she was wrestling afterwards, or did he contact you, or how did that happen? How did that
happen? Yeah, so
that connection reconnect, or did you guys reconnect, or later on?
We didn't reconnect till like 4 months ago, maybe 5 months ago. And so there were several times throughout the years where I tried to connect, like, you know, social media, that kind of deal, but just nothing came about, you know. And so I have a really good friend who is really good at finding people. I made a post. I'm like, you know, this is a part of my story. This is part of my book. This is part of, you know, reconciliation, forgiveness, either way, letting him know, you know, hey, I don't hold anything against you. We're good, you know. And so I posted again about maybe 4-ish months ago, and my friend called me. He's like, dude, I found him. I'm like, no way. What? You didn't find him? Seriously? So he found somebody who was like related to him, but they lived in Kansas, but he lived, I think he said he lived in Oklahoma City. So I was like, okay. And then he said, but this guy says, my friend called this guy's work, got his number in Oklahoma City from this guy, and then gave me that information. This is his name. This is his Facebook, blah, blah, blah. And then I was just like, all right, I'm going to reach out to him, see what happens. I sent him a message, hey, man, I think you broke my neck. I think we're wrestling together. Like, how do you start that conversation?
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah. So that's how we got in contact, you know. But
so did he try to contact you, or he knew that he broke your neck, right?
Oh, yeah, he knew it. It was highly publicized. And even now, he said, like, when it happened, he said he heard it outside. He heard the breaking of it. Like, and he was like, he said when he heard it, he instantly just stopped and got, in the video, you see him just push back off me because he's this ain't right. Something's not right, you know? And so he knew. And then, like, you know, it definitely did negatively affect him. You know, he was telling me, like, he said, you know, he works in the mental health field as well. And he said, you know, he's a very kind man. And he was saying, like, you know, you used to realize that you changed this person's life forever. And it wasn't intentional. We were just going out doing what we do. We wrestle. This is what we do, right? And so he said, like, you know, he wanted to reach out, but he wasn't sure how I felt about it and all those kind of things. He never did, but he did, like, fundraising for me and stuff. And they, you know, he tried to help that way, which is really incredibly kind. And then, like, he said, like, we talked to coach, talked to counselors, you know, that kind of deal. And he said it was so hard to try to move forward because I'm trying to get better. And you know how, like, sometimes teenagers are kind of callous and they just say whatever's on their mind.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, like, he's around the hallways, like, watch out for that guy. He broke that guy's neck, you know. And he's like, you know, I'm trying to I'm trying to heal from this. And then you just have this another aspect of this wound, you know. And so it's interesting, you know, there's always, you know, two sides to every story. You know, you see what somebody goes through.
You stay away more then, huh?
Yeah, it you know, it really challenged a lot of my thinking. But even as I've developed as a therapist, like, I hear other sides of the story. I'm like, oh, and it makes, you know, it affects us all differently. You know, it affected him too. You know, I mean, yeah, I had the physical part of it, but I would definitely say it significantly affected him as well.
How did you think? Oh, what did he say, if you can? How did it affect him?
He always wondered. And, like, you know, I asked him, I said, you know, one of the conversations we had, so we first met, like, kind of ish on FaceTime. And, we just kind of talked a little bit. I tried to get the audio, but if something happened with the audio, I don't know. I got to take notes from Ray because Ray's got this down. So he said that he always wondered and he wanted to know if I was okay and that kind of deal. But he didn't want to reach out to make it worse than what it already was. But he didn't know what my response would be. So it was like, I don't know what to do. One of the things that I told him, I said, and this is like one of the most profound things I think. I said, I don't know if you've loved with unforgiveness and that kind of thing, or if you just had uneasy feelings or not knowing. And I said, this was an accident, man, straight up an accident. I said, I don't hold anything against you. I said, at first it was really hard, and I was angry, but I got over that real quick after recognizing it. Like, this was an accident. And I said, dude, I just want you to know that I hold no unforgiveness towards you, and you're free of any kind of guilt or whatever you feel about the situation. I said, I want you to be free. I want you to prosper mentally as well. I want your family to prosper. And sometimes when people live with like such unforgiveness, it just is like a plague, poisoning their lives. And so his response is like, dude, that like really helps, because I mean, you can just tell, you just look in his face, you're just like, this is a bad deal for both of us. But
wow. So how did you deal with the anger? So we talk about unforgiveness and forgiveness, so how did you deal with the anger? Because like you said, it can be a poison. And so say somebody who's newly injured and has this condition, how do they deal with it? Or do they just go with the flow of the process of
That's a great question. So like, I went to Craig Hospital. I don't know where you did your rehab at, but I was at Craig in Colorado, and we had patient education classes. We had a lot of other people perspectives, right? So we got to see like the worst of the worst, like people who are they're never going to get better. They're paralyzed from their neck down, traumatic brain injuries and all that. And in some of those classes, we had one nurse. She was an educator, but she was paraplegic as well. She's amazing. And she always said, the things that we can control are our attitude, and we can be thankful. And there's literally always something to be thankful for. And with the spinal cord injury, some of the things that I feel like is either you are literally going to thrive, you're going to choose to thrive, right? There's no middle ground with spinal cord injuries, or you're going to die. Yeah, that's the only route. You don't get a middle ground. And I knew in my heart that anger is such a deep root that would cause my demise and my death. So straight up. It's
preach it, man. Preach. I love it.
Straight up that. So I was like, okay, well, and getting over that kind of deal, there's a process with it. I dealt with suicidal ideation because I'm like, what value do I have? I can't play sports and blah, blah, blah. That all or nothing thinking, but when you like get a little bit down the road and you learn how to navigate, the roads of paralysis and all that, I think any of us can adapt and like rediscover what we want to do or do something, right? And I always tell people like, look, people like when they come into my office, sometimes they're just so broken. We're all broken, which is what it is. And one of the things is like, I'm like, look, you literally walked in here and your fingers work and your toes work and you got the same brain as Einstein. So let's not, you're already ahead of the game than I am, and I'm a therapist. Yeah. So let's start there on a foundation of like, you have some things that are going on in your life that are amazing. So let's get it, So, but yeah, you have to, with anger, sometimes people just passively deal with it, just make excuses for it and all that. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a duck. Let's deal with it. And so, the two things like for myself, like getting over things and finding forgiveness is, the biggest thing, bottom line, the only reason why I've gotten through this is my faith. Mm-hmm. Straight up. And that's just the way it is. Right. Faith and family. And, I knew like, based on my faith and those kind of things that, Jesus talked a lot about anger, and
anger.
What's that?
The righteous anger as well.
That's right. I had every reason to be angry, but even if you have every reason to be angry, it can still hurt you.
Yeah.
You're justified to have your feelings, but deal with it. You know, so many times you're just like, it just goes on for years, and you know, anger it can break relationships, it can break families, it can break. I mean, it just damages, it poisons everything.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because when I first got paralyzed at 14, I grew up Catholic, and I believed in God. I believe in Jesus. However, it was a little blurry for me, meaning there was no ramp to even get into the church. So I wasn't even able to go to church. And so I found God by reading my Bible, and I would just read my Bible every day, just open it up. God, what you have to say to me? It was just like a fun little game. And I found myself in a lot of isolation, which was good and bad. I mean, the good part, I built a really strong relationship with God. And I kind of, it was a little difficult when people would talk to me about God, because I was like, I talk to God every day, and I think I can help you more than you can help me. And whether I was being judgmental or not, I felt that the religion per se of people trying to throw the Bible at me per se. However, it doesn't mean I didn't believe in it. So let's say somebody out there is like, yeah, I believe in God, but I just don't get it. I just don't get this. Why people keep talking about Jesus? Why people keep talking about faith? I'm not there yet. What is it so great about Jesus and his Holy Spirit that people keep talking about? And how do I get to that relationship? How do I get there? Like, walk me through that process, how you got there, or how did it click? Like, it wasn't your parents who told you. It was something that the accident, something clicked where it was like, boom, my faith, and I believe.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great question. So near-death experiences, they rewire our brain?
Yeah.
150%. And the one thing that I knew is that, you know, I live in the conservative Midwest, and I've had, you know, beliefs choked down my throat. But when you're close to death or have experienced those kind of things, what do you believe? And so it created a hunger inside of me. Like, I can't take somebody else's word for what my faith is and my beliefs are, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to, like, I mean, it was multifaceted. The first part was like, I was in this group one time at church, and they're like, you know, we talk about this is what we believe, this is our faith, blah, blah, blah. There's like 50, 60 people in there. How many people over there just read the Bible cover to cover? Only like 5 people raised their hand. I'm just like, oh, really? Oh, yeah, God, are you telling me something here? So one of the things that I did, one, the trials and all that fun stuff, that helps you kind of like really like, what are you going to believe? The other thing was like reading the Bible cover to cover was just like so beneficial for me, but in multiple translations. So, you know, ESV, MSG, you know, King James, all those, and just whether I understand it or not, I can believe that God gave me the Holy Spirit, and that He's going to allow me to digest as much as possible. And hopefully, every time that I do it again, I'm going to understand more and more and more. Yeah. So that's part of the faith. The second thing is that, how do you deal with anger and that kind of deal? Is you identify what you're passionate about, right? We've been through some terrible things, and some, you know, the for example, you're saying like, I can't go to church. I went to a university that was not very wheelchair friendly. I was the only quadriplegic, the only person in a wheelchair there. And they're just not accommodating. Like, they wouldn't put automatic doors there. They had like this person assigned to me, and I could be angry and bitter, right? Or they didn't put rails up, or the elevator didn't work, and I'd get docked points for not being in class. Just nonsense, right? And so one of the things that is part of that, dealing with anger and that faith and like moving forward, is one, the faith, the family, you know, the support system.
Yeah.
But when I identified what I was passionate about, slam dunk. I'll die to everything else to focus on that, and nothing else matters, right? Yeah. And so that's whatever, you know, when I was telling you the story previously a little bit about how I identified I wanted to be a therapist and that kind of deal. And it's like faith, family, identify your passion, and the opinions of others they don't matter anymore.
Doesn't matter.
I'm gonna do me. You're gonna do you. And you know, I heard this one saying is like, you know, people always are just like, you know, the people's business, and it's like, you know, until your kitchen's clean and put in order, don't be judging somebody else's.
True.
Stay out the kitchen.
Keep it clean. Keep your kitchen clean. Boom.
That's right. That's right. So I just focused on I always tell people, like, look, we always have these people who, like, they don't take the time to truly identify the things that they're passionate about. So I think God gifted us with abilities to be, like, passionate about 10 things, 20 things, 30 things. That's fine. But sometimes people are just looking all over at the thousands and thousands of things instead of focusing in on certain ones. And then once they have those certain ones, whether it's 5 of them, 10 of them, then we aim for excellence in each one of those. So we're like, dude, I'm going to keep working this until I'm the best at what I do with that, or this one, and I'm the best at what I do with that, And so that was definitely a huge part of just dealing with the anger. But the one that I had to really be careful of is staying busy and avoiding my healing, right? We have intentional healing. We have intentional suffering, right? So intentional suffering, right? Yes. Does it have to be a measurable experience, or can we thrive, learn, grow, become the better person of ourselves, right?
Good.
Intentional healing is like, look, I've had something incredibly terrible happen to me. And so one of the things I was guilty of, and I was in an 8-year depression, is being involved with everything else except for being intentional about my healing, right? So I'd be busy with, like, car audio projects and hanging out with friends and blah, blah, blah. And just like the elephant in the room, you're still paralyzed, dude. It'd slap you right in the face, like, oh, yep, I'm still paralyzed. Probably better deal with this, the old cat in the bag here. And so I just had to be intentional about it and just stop all the avoidant behavior, you know what I mean? And just be like, okay, this is what happened. Let's talk about it.
I've been there. I spent 10 years not realizing I was in a wheelchair. And you would think, like, I would know. Until I went to college, Oklahoma, ironically. When I was in Oklahoma in the dorm room, I think my first day there, there's no furniture in the apartment. And literally, I'm like, wow, I'm by myself. I have to feed myself. I have to bathe I mean, of course, I'm independent, but I still had help, like, for food and ironing my clothes and doing the dishes and just, like, domestic things, period, fixing the bed, all that stuff. And so literally, I'm about to do my laundry, and then my laundry drops on the floor, and I had to pick it up. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm in a wheelchair. And literally, it was just a light bulb went on, like, I'm in a wheelchair. And so Oklahoma was definitely a blessing to me. It changed the trajectory of my life. I thought I had a really close relationship with God. It went to another level in Oklahoma. The Bible, like you said, reading the Bible spoke louder. The just was transforming me. And it was just one of those things where, a religion can't do. You know what I mean? It was just a one-on-one relationship.
It's only relationship.
Yeah, it was. I had to work on myself. I had to be intentional to work on myself, and recognize that I wasn't okay. Because I had newspaper articles, I was in business, so many great accomplishments, and I'm still not okay. And it just clicked. And then from then on, it was like, okay, I'm okay with not being okay, but I'm not okay with not being okay, and I'm going to do something about it, if that makes sense.
That's the intentional healing portion.
Yeah.
Okay. It's okay to be not okay, but sitting there passively and idly doing other things, not being we got to be intentional about it. So it's like you had an epiphany, but, like, it's almost like the way you're explaining it is like that thrive or die concept. You're like, this laundry just fell on the floor. Either I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this. It was only you. So
only me. It was only because before my mom would have helped me, or my brother. I could say, hey, or I would just leave it and somebody else would pick it up. Whatever.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's like, whatever. I got a lot of other stuff I got to deal with, like, waking up, and I realized that too, because like you said, it was live or die. And my wife asked me this one time. She's like, how do you do it? I said, every day I wake up, I have to make a choice. I have to choose to live or die. And there's no, like you said, there's no in between. Because
there's no middle ground.
There's no middle ground, because it's one of those things. It's so real. If you don't choose to live, that little inch that someone can decide, let me play middle ground. For me, if I did play the middle ground, boom, medical stuff will happen. Boom. Like
Every time.
I would almost die. Like, it's no, for real. Like, I would almost die. Like, literally. Like, oh, Ray's in the hospital again. Oh, man, is he all right? I hope he pulls out this time. You know? So it's real. Wow. So yeah, that's something that it's so real. I can definitely relate and attest to that.
And that, you know, that applies, I think, to able-bodied people, anybody. You're either going to thrive or die in this life, right? And you have people who just stay in that like miserable experience and like, oh, life's terrible, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, if you're going to stay there and just like constantly make that effort that you're not going to try, then I guess go and start planning your funeral, because I mean, that's being real. I mean, you want to, get the cat out of the bag here. So
no. It's real. Because say if someone they say, okay, they want to, let's say someone decides I want to die, but let's die to the things that are not good for us. Let's die to the depression. Let's die to those
self.
Let's die to those emotions that necessarily won't get us the result that we want. It won't bring anything good.
Just superficial and no fruit. It's the self gratification. Like, oh yeah, someone didn't like my stuff. Oh, I'm gonna be depressed. What? It's not even like that. Do what you're passionate about. None of that stuff matters when you're passionate about it. You know.
Exactly. Exactly. So how are you adjusting? So now you're on bed rest for a little bit. So how's that? Like, how is?
Yeah, it's no fun. And just air conditioners broke at work. I don't feel my skin, so I didn't know I was sweating. So, sitting in sweat, it's not good for your skin. So It is what it is. I've been down since August 22nd right now, and today is October 4th. So hopefully another 2 weeks I'll be done, or a week or less. I don't know. We'll see. So how I adjust is, not only am I a therapist, but I work for a company that's really gracious with me, and that they go above and beyond to accommodate me as a therapist. Awesome. And so I'm able to see clients back to back at home. And so we have iPad appointments or therapy appointments, like telemedicine. And so we check iPads out to clients, but I also have another iPad in my office, and I'm just back to back with seeing people via face-to-face over iPads. So making sure, that's one of the things as a therapist, is that even though like I'm down right now and that kind of deal, it's still my responsibility to make sure that they're moving forward. I just don't abandon them and all that kind of stuff. So I always go above and beyond to make sure that my clients are seen. And so this is what I do. So I have my laptop on me, I have my iPad on me, and, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, seeing clients.
Wow, so, that's amazing. So let's break that down for a little bit. Have a wrestling accident, which paralyzed you, become quadriplegic. You graduate college, high school. You graduate high school, graduate college, master's. Am I correct?
Yep. So I graduated, got my diploma, and then I went to get my bachelor's of science in psychology. So that was 5.5 years. And then I did a master's of science in professional counseling. And then now I'm under clinical licensure to be a licensed clinical therapist. So I've completed my hours, which is, I had to have 3,000. I'm done with it. I've taken the first exam, just got to pass the final exam, and then I'll be a licensed clinician. And then, God willing, we're doing a PhD program.
Wow.
Ain't playing. We ain't playing.
So
taking names.
Games. And then so then that, and also the news does a story about you and the other gentleman that injured you, not intentionally.
Right.
And then there was forgiveness already there, but he needed to receive the forgiveness so he can know he's all right. And then now you're on bed rest for a pressure sore for about 2 months, and then you're still seeing clients, you're still doing it, you're still making it happen, and you still doing a podcast for Ray Grand.
I'm also writing a book. 2 books. So the books will be done hopefully January 1st, but I'm over 50,000 words deep, so it's coming.
And writing a book, and I say writing a book.
What's that?
Wow. What is your excuse?
There's no excuse.
Your excuse. explain, because sometimes people don't know what paraplegic is. So paraplegic is paralyzed from the waist down. So I'm considered paraplegic, and you're a quadriplegic.
Right.
So explain to me or anybody who's listening, what is a quadriplegic?
Yeah. So basically, paraplegic would just mean simply a break in the thoracic, lumbar, or sacral vertebrae, and it only basically affects like nipple line down on impairment. And you have the use of your hands in those areas. Now, quadriplegic is anything that's broken in the cervical region, and so that can be C1 through 6, 7, and basically it affects all 4 limbs. So I broke mine at cervical 5, 6, so it affects my fingers. My fingers do not work at all. It affects my triceps. They do not work at all. And I'm literally paralyzed from my collarbones down. I don't even have pecs. So it's a different road for sure. So yeah. So even like you're probably like seeing me and I'm like spasming, moving around over here. That's just my clonus spasms. So I'm looking here like, dude, why is he like all over the place? That's just involuntary. It just happens. So yeah.
Yeah, that to me, I'm telling you, is super inspirational, because a lot of the times I can deal with pain, and I'm listening to your story and I'm like, man, this guy does not stop, and he's actually adding value to people's lives. And then when you look at the story, you're like, whoa. Like, I'll put the video in the link, and then when you see it, you'll be like, wow. Like, it's like, wow. It's like, wow. And then look at the aftermath, and then look at what God has done in this man's life. It's hallelujah.
That's right. You know the crazy thing about life sometimes, and here's what I think a lot of times about life is people are playing with game. People are playing with life like it's a game, and they're going to get to the end of it and realize that it wasn't a game and that they don't get a redo. And then they're going to be, that would be horrible to get to the end and be like, oh yeah, I just wasted my whole life. That to me would just be terrible. So you play with games, you're going to get prizes you probably don't want. So,
yeah. And I think we both can attest that, like you said, near-death experiences brings you so close to God in a sense where it's like, okay, all right, God, how do you want to do this thing? How do you want me to live? And where do you want me to go? And who am I to do this? And those questions, when those questions begin to answer, you have this tenacity in you that you thought you never even had. And it's like, what? Okay, what's in the way? It's not.
But the crazy thing is that it gives me strength that's just undeniable. Is because in Philippians 4:13, Christ said to do all things, right?
Oh.
Through Christ that strengthens you, right? Not some things, not partial things, all things. Okay. And it's so much that's what this tattoo is right here on my forearm, because I got to know every day when I look down and see my broken body, he said all things. All things includes quadriplegia and paraplegia. Last time I checked. So let's get it.
Let's get it. And that's even imagine somebody that is not even able to talk. There's still a possibility for them to do something. There's machines, there's something. As long as there's breathing, as long as there's a breath in you, all things are possible.
That's right.
All things, as long as there's a breath, there's still a breath, there's still hope, there's still life, there's still a possibility for God to move. Anything is possible with him, our Savior, Lord Jesus Christ. Man, I'm so excited.
Fire, dude.
I'm excited, man.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. This is good. Yeah. So Kris, what's next? You have the book that's coming out. Do you have a name for the book yet, or?
Yeah, it's called Empower, Motivate, Overcome by Kris Cordero.
Cordero. I love it.
I can't tell you the graphics because the graphics are just going to be incredible. I got first draft graphics done. I'm 50,426 words into it. So I'm going to try to power through it and finish up the last 3 to 4 chapters this weekend. And then I can get that off to the editor. And then once the editor's doing their thing, then I'm just going to focus back on the National Counselor examination, pass that, get that back from editing, collaborate it, create my pitches, submit it to different publishers, and see who wants it. If they don't want it, I'll self-publish.
They want it. And regardless, it's going to get out. It's going to get out to the people regardless. So,
speak and fire, bro.
So what encouraging words would you give to somebody who is newly injured, or somebody who has have a disability, or doesn't really see themselves with a disability, which is good. However, understanding that they have a certain reality in their life that they're dealing with,
Yeah.
like you said, to be intentional
Yes.
in that healing process, to be intentional. So what encouraging words or what advice would you give to that person?
So it's gonna be a multi-portion answer. So the first two things, absolutely, be intentional about your healing and your suffering. You never know what you can learn, how you can thrive, how you can grow by being intentional about those things, right? That. Identify what you're passionate about, because if you're paralyzed, newly paralyzed, your passion may have been sports like mine, and then you're like, okay, what do I do? And before, for myself specifically, it was like, I just stay eligible just to play sports. And then I break my neck, and then I'm like, I got to do this academic stuff. So identify what you're passionate about, right? And then whatever you're passionate about, aim for excellence, right? And the final thing, work hard, sacrifice everything, believe in your mind, and you can achieve, and this life is yours. Die to yourself, sacrifice everything. I promise you this life is yours. You'll have whatever you want, whether you're able-bodied or not. You can adapt. That's right. We're quadriplegics, paraplegics. We're kings and queens of adaptation. From rehab, OT, PT, all that stuff. Oh, here's a little foam thing on this. Now you adapt. Now you empower, motivate, you overcome. Boom. That's it right there.
Boom. There you have it. Kris.
Yes.
We have Kris here. And where can they find you, Kris, on social media or any social?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to find me on Facebook, I don't have like a website or anything like that. I think social media is the most proficient way. So if you just type, if you're on Facebook, just /Kris Cordero. So it's KRIS, and then it's CORDERO. On Instagram, it's _KD Cordero, CORDERO. And we can put the hashtags and all that stuff down there in the line. And then you can also find me on TikTok, which I do a lot of TikTok.
Yeah.
It's quadriplegic therapy. And then I'm also on YouTube, which is quadriplegic therapist. So I'm creating content all the time, engaging on TikTok, posting up stuff that helps the SCI community, help other people, inspire, motivate, help people overcome their stuff. So I'll make sure to give you all those handlebars though. So yeah.
Yes, indeed. It was a great pleasure to have you on the Ray Grand Show, Kris Cordero. I will make sure to put all the links in the bio, in the description. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And of course, the attitude to gratitude. We thank our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, every day. So we're very grateful for this opportunity. And make sure you listen. And until next time, the Ray Grand Show. Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you like something that you heard, please leave a review. Oh, one more thing.
If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all.
Love y'all.